Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session today. My name is Moria, and I'm the Reactor Program Manager. I'm based in Tel Aviv, Israel, and I'm super excited to be here today and moderate this session on the magic of nonlinear careers. This is part of our International Women's Day series for the Reactor launched. This event is also in partnership with the High Tech Women of Israel community, a community established by Milana Reiter, with a mission to create a warm home for women working in tech in Israel, a place to consult, share, and enjoy a variety of professional lectures and workshops. I'm going to share with you a link to the Facebook community page shortly in the comments tab. Our speaker for today is Noga Tal, a global head of partnership at Microsoft for startups. Noga is a startup and tech entrepreneur executive specializing in global corporate innovation and startup engagement strategies. Noga currently leads a team at Microsoft that focuses on building the company relationships with startup enabling organizations. Before I hand it over to Noga, I wanted to add that we would love to make this session interactive and hear from you. So please feel free to post your questions. We will take the time to answer the questions at the end. I will be also moderating and helping Noga to answer the questions. I'm also going to share with you a link to a survey that we conduct for our events, and appreciate if you can take a minute or two to fill in the survey and share your feedback with us. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Noga now, and hope you enjoy.
Thank you so much, Moria, and welcome everyone, especially the women from the Israeli high-tech community and everyone else from around the world who's joining us. I'm really excited to be giving this talk today and to chat with all of you. I ask you to be extra patient with me because this is the first time that I'm doing this in a digital environment. So I've done this in live, which it works is much easier on me as a speaker because I get to see you and I get to see your reactions. So this is going to be a little different. So here and there, I might ask you a few questions. And if you'd like to type them into the chat, it would be fantastic because then I can also have a bit of engagement with you. And then, as Moria mentioned, we'll also leave plenty of time at the end for questions, feedback, anything that you want to share with us. So what are we going to talk about today? As Moria mentioned, today I lead a team that is focused on Microsoft for Startups strategy in how we build partnerships with accelerators, with investors, and different communities all over the world. So essentially, I'm part of the corporate headquarters of Microsoft, even though I sit in Tel Aviv, Israel. And essentially what my team does is really sets the strategy of who do we want to, who does Microsoft work with? How do we support entrepreneurs through these different communities? But what I want to talk about today is a bit about how careers look like to us on the outside and what they actually look like on the inside, and what it means to actually have a nonlinear career, because mine has been quite different than I think what I would have expected and what maybe other people would have expected. And I wanted to take you on this journey with me, tell you a bit about how I got to where I am today, and then give you a few tips and best practices that I learned along the way that really worked for me, whether you are looking to make a career change, whether maybe this last year, especially with COVID, hasn't gone exactly the way you planned in terms of promotions, in terms of the type of trajectory that you were hoping for. So hoping to help hopefully help you rethink and think of some new strategies of how to approach things. So with that, one second, I'm just learning how to use this platform. So what are we even talking about? What does it mean to have a nonlinear career? So when we talk about the traditional careers that we still see out there, and a lot of folks, back in the day, if we think about the 50s and even some particular disciplines that we know of today, there would be a very linear progression. So you would get out of university, or in the case of Israel, the army, you would get your first job, then you would get a promotion, then you'd slowly work your way up the ladder. Maybe you'd hit your dream job at some point, and then that's it, you retire. Some careers, some professions are still very much structured like that. But the reality is that for most of us, our career isn't that structured and that nice and neat, even the way we tell our story, right? The way I told you my story at the intro and the way Moriah told you my story, it's very different than what you're going to hear today. The reality is that behind the scenes, things get far more messy, right? We finish high school and we don't really know what we want to do, and then we choose some type of a program, and maybe we choose a college focus area, and then we change our mind and we take a year off and then we do something different, and then we go back and we get a second degree in a completely different thing, and we start one job and then we start another. Maybe we're unemployed at some point in the middle, and for me, this has actually been something that's been, a real pleasure, a real joy to keep rediscovering and discovering new things about myself and changing paths and realigning every time, whether it was because that I wanted to change in my career or whether it was because of external circumstances. So I want to take you a little bit, I want to take you on this journey. I want to tell you how I got to where I am today, all the twists and turns, and then go through a few things that I learned along the way in case they, hopefully they'll be helpful for you. So in the beginning, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm half Israeli and half American, which means I get to pay taxes in both countries. My dad is American, my mom is Israeli. I grew up in both countries. I was born in Israel, but I was born into a bilingual household. So I was very lucky to have that from day one, to have both languages. I actually grew up in I would even say 3 different cities. And I don't know if anyone can actually recognize these pictures. If we have any folks from Israel, I'm sure you can recognize the picture on the left. That is Haifa. That is my hometown, but I also grew up in Cleveland, which is the middle picture, which is quite nondescript. With all my love of Cleveland, it is not a beauty to behold. And then also my family's in Los Angeles. So I split my time in all 3 of these cities. And I count myself lucky to have had a very international exposure and to have had a chance to get exposed to different things. I'm taking a moment here to stop and talk a little bit about feminism because it ties into the story later on. But at some point when I was 8 years old, living in Israel at the time, this is the 80s, which is why I pictured here the little pin buttons that were quite popular back then. So when I was around 7 or 8 years old, I self-proclaimed myself a feminist. I decided that that was what I was. And I promise you, I did not even understand what it meant, but it was very important to me, and it started to become a very strong part of my identity, and it has actually led me on the path that I am today. I finished high school in Israel, which meant that my next stop was in the military. Now, for those of you who are dialing in today from any other country than Israel, when you think about women in the military, I know you typically think about this image that you see here. There's a woman, and she's in the trenches with all the men, and she's doing some really important things. But the reality is it looks a bit more like this, or at least my military service looks a bit more like this. I was very gung-ho on this feminist notion that I had, that I was equal to men. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Unfortunately, that was not available at the time. It was not open to women. So I ended up actually doing something really interesting, and I served in a unit that was in charge of liaising with the United Nations. So in every region that Israel has a border where the United Nations is present, that's what we did. So that was my military career. I finished the Army, and in true form, just like everyone who finishes the Army in Israel or everyone who finishes college in the States, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like absolutely zero clue. I signed up for different things at university. I changed my mind. I changed my majors. I stopped. I started, all that jazz. And then I moved to Tel Aviv, the city of beaches. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get my answer in Tel Aviv. There's a ton of opportunities here. I will find my answer in Tel Aviv, which I am, by the way, still living in Tel Aviv all these years later. So something worked. And then I landed my first job. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just working blind, trying different things out, interviewing for jobs. I had, the international experience. I had the language. And my first job was, and this is where I'm going to ask you to participate. Guess what? Based on this picture, And I will tell you, it was not a writer for South Park. Anyone venture a guess? Anyone feeling lucky today? In the chat window. Nada? I'm going to give the answer away in a minute, but essentially my very, very first job was at the Home Shopping Channel of Israel. So based on my international experience, language, what I'd done in the army, looking at different jobs, this one was the one that was paid the most money, and that's all I could care about when I was 21. They let me manage their import department, which was a pretty ridiculous job for 21-year-olds, but I got to decide and assess different types of products that would come into Israel and would go up in the home shopping network. For those of you who don't know what it is, I envy you. It was a very cheesy, I think it's still going, but very cheesy channel where you got to purchase items online. So we're not even online. We didn't even have a website back then, but you would call and you would get your product. So that was my very, very first job. The only thing that I had in front of me was I need to make money, and that's the job that's going to pay me the most. After that, I went to university. I got my degree while I kept working at the Home Shopping Channel, and I started to think about what I actually wanted in life. And I started to be very active in politics, and I decided that my next move was to do with, again, back to the feminism. I wanted to change the world. I really wanted to go out there and do something that was meaningful. I wanted to change society. And at this point, that meant being unemployed. So I finished my first degree. At that point, I had stopped working at the Home Shopping Channel. I had quit my job. Thankfully, I could afford to be unemployed for a few months, and I decided that by hook or by crook, I was going to be a feminist. I was going to get paid for it. I was going to work at a nonprofit organization. Unfortunately, the number of nonprofit organizations tackling women's issues in Israel at the time was exactly 2, and they were not hiring. So after a few months, I decided I would work in the nonprofit space. I would change the world, not necessarily directly in feminism, but close enough. And I was lucky enough to get a job with one of Israel's leading nonprofit organizations. They had one of their top folks who was doing all kinds of grant writing and working with investors from the US was going on maternity leave, and they needed someone to replace her. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting opportunity for me. Let me see if it sticks. Luckily for me, it stuck. I was there for almost 3 years. I had amazing experiences, had a chance to be a speechwriter and do all kinds of different things. And then I decided I wanted to pivot again. So I quit my job and I tried something new. I went to work for a VC, and I hated it. I mean, I hated it from day one. It took about 3 weeks until I was out of there. I can't remember if it was me or them, but it was, let's call it a mutual decision. I was out. So here I am, unemployed again, still wanting to change the world. My next step was to go into another nonprofit, this time as a co-founder, really nice organization, really hard, starting from scratch. For those of you who remember the economic crisis in 2008, we launched exactly with the economic crisis, so it was quite the experience. And after 2 years, I was feeling an itch. I felt like I wanted to do something more. I felt like I'd hit some type of I wouldn't call it a glass ceiling, but some type of a ceiling that happens in the nonprofit sector where I wanted more challenge. I wanted more, and I felt like I had peaked. There was nothing much more for me to do. It was super challenging and exciting, but I wanted something different. I was fascinated by the tech industry, but I also felt like an outsider. I had quite the imposter syndrome. And I wondered if there was a way for me to try it out without fully committing, without fully, taking on a career in tech. And lo and behold, a friend of a friend was working for Microsoft, and she was about to go on maternity leave, and they needed someone to come in, cover for her for 7 months. And I thought, this is actually great, right? There's a level of risk here. I'm quitting a solid job, but I get to try tech. I get to see if it fits, if it's something that's interesting for me. That was 12 years ago. There's still a few more twists in the story, but I am at Microsoft still, or again. So I did find that it really suited my passions. It suited my interest in exploring new areas. But it was it was only for a few months. It ended up getting extended and extended and extended. But at some point, the contract ended. I left, I came back, I got another contract, I got some more experience under my belt, this time in corporate social responsibility. So I was jumping around, I was doing a bit of marketing, then someone else got pregnant, by the way, and they said, okay, now we need someone to help with corporate social responsibility. You come from the nonprofit space. Great, come on in. So I got to do that for a bit. But at some point, I felt like I needed something more stable. I needed something that would help me propel my career forward rather than doing different roles. Didn't feel like it was going on the best of ways for me. And this is where I made an interesting decision. I'm not going to call it a mistake because it ended up working out really well, but I felt like I needed to get out of a bad situation. And I just ran towards the first opportunity that crossed my way. Now, that opportunity was, let's see if anyone can guess, if folks are not feeling too shy. So it was not hummus, but it was Strauss. So for Israelis on the call will know, Strauss is a huge F&B company with 5 daughter companies. I was part of their corporate headquarters, director of internal communications for 5 daughter companies. On paper, it sounded like the most amazing opportunity. It would propel my career forward. I had the skills from Microsoft. I had done internal communications at Microsoft for a few months, but it's a very rare experience. So they were, really happy to have me on board. I was happy to be there. Guess what? I was miserable. I started the job and I was absolutely miserable. Not because the company isn't great. They are amazing and they're an amazing company, but something between the culture and the role and what my expectations were just did not fit. And it happened very quickly. I knew within when just like with relationships, I knew probably within 3 weeks I had not made the right move. And I was miserable. Here I am in my 30s. I should have everything figured out by now. But for some reason, I don't. And this is the point where I start crying. And I call my mom up and I tell her to get my room ready because I'm moving back home, because I don't have money, because I don't want to stay here, because, drama. Managed to calm down. Had a really good conversation with the folks at Strauss. They were super understanding. And we agreed that I would stay until I found something else. They needed someone in the role. I hadn't found something else yet. Just knew that it wasn't a great fit. So stayed there for, another 6 months. And then guess who calls me back? From my old friends at Microsoft. And they say, hey, we've got this really interesting project to build out how we work with startups. And we think Israel is a really great area for us to try a few new things out. And we'd love for you to come back. You know the company, you know the people, you can really ramp up very quickly. Would you be willing to come back? And here's the trick. It's, again, a 7-month contract. So again, high risk, but potential high rewards. And I decided, you know what? Sounds great. I'll take it. Sounds super interesting. Know nothing about the cloud, but I'll catch up. All good. So I moved into the startup space. This was, I would say 7 or 8 years ago, came back to Microsoft. The 7-month contract ended up becoming a full-time job, which then led to different roles, to promotions, to managing a team, and to where I am now. So that is the long version of the introduction that you heard both Moria and myself tell, which isn't quite, as pretty, not quite as neat, but it was really important for me to tell you how I got to where I am today, because I think a lot of times we see in the media, these perfect Cinderella stories of how careers are made and how people make decisions and how, they plan 5 years ahead and they've got this 5-step plan. And the truth of the matter is that life is messy, careers are messy. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's by external circumstances. And a lot of times we have to, really optimize for the opportunity that's in front of us and for what we want to do. So I wanted to, based on these stories that I just told you of kind of the high broad strokes of what I went through, I wanted to talk a bit about some of the things that I've learned along the way, going through all of these, emotional roller coasters and decision points in my life of how to navigate my career, and talk a bit about what has at least worked for me. So the cheat sheet. So one of the things that in all throughout the different changes that I made, whether they were big and whether they were small, whether they were inside of Microsoft or, before I came to the company, was really determining what my personal price of change is. And price of change is how, what is it that you are willing to do or to give up in order to make this change that you'd like to make. If you want to make a complete career change, if you want to try out a completely new discipline, if you want to go for that promotion, what is that price of change for you? Are you willing to move to a new city? Are you willing to take a course in order to learn some new skills? Are you willing to maybe be unemployed for a few months? So really figuring out, sitting down, to the details of like what are your financials? Are you able to take the potential cost that this change is going to entail? And it doesn't mean that your price of change means that you can or you cannot change your career. It just means that it helps you to define your parameters, right? If you can't afford to be unemployed, great. That means that you have to look at a specific path that allows you to continue to be employed and maybe try things off on the side as a hobby in your free time and so on. So really figuring out what your own personal price of change is. There's no right answer. It's very personal to your situation. The other thing I would say, and I've seen this with myself and also with people that I've interviewed and friends, family members, this one is really tough to implement, but I think it's so important to notice. Run towards what it is that you want rather than running away from what you don't want. All of us have this natural tendency when we're going through a tough time, when we're not really loving what we're doing at work, we swing to the other end. We say, okay, just not this. And we really tend to focus when we're looking for something new on the opposite. And then we overemphasize the opposite, right? So if your manager is a micromanager, that's all you can see. If it's really annoying you, that's all you're going to focus on. You're not going to focus on the positives and what it is that you actually do want. You're just going to go, I just don't want someone who's a micromanager. You'll find a job and all you'll see is, great, I found a manager who will let me do what I want. That a lot of times causes us to forget to focus on the other things. So when it's possible, when you can afford it, when you've got the time, really take the time to figure out what it is that you want to move towards. For me, I'm not sorry I left my job at Microsoft to try something else when I went to Strauss. It ended up allowing me to come back to Microsoft to an opportunity that was even more aligned with my passions. But I will say I was running away rather than running towards Strauss. And I think that was part of the mismatch for me. The other thing is to really set a clear intention and to communicate it to the world. I found that many times when I wanted to make a change, if someone was not 100% supportive of me, or I was just, I had my own imposter syndrome and I was scared, I would tend to get really shy about my aspirations and my goals, and I just wouldn't talk about it. Who's going to want me? I don't have any background in tech. Who is going to want me? I don't have any background in nonprofits. Why would they take me rather than someone else? And the thing is, when you are brave enough to speak out what your intention is and to communicate it clearly to everyone around you, you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to support you and to help you. And at the end of the day, you just need that one person who's willing to give you a chance, that one person who's willing to, who's willing to see what you bring to the table, even if you come from a different background than the traditional one. So I would really encourage you to get vocal about what you want. Transferable skills. I'm sure you've heard this one before, but when you're making career changes, when you're, going for this nonlinear mode where you're moving, sideways and even back and maybe going down to go up, it's really, really important to sit down and map out what skills you've actually learned in your previous roles, and how do they transfer into new areas and into new roles that you might want to try out. You can also develop your skills, right? So whether it's taking courses, whether it's knowing that in the future or very soon you want to try something different, you can also negotiate with your manager to make sure that some of the projects you're doing right now would help you to build those transferable skills for a future where you are doing something different, right? I actually have someone on my team who is doing that right now. We have an open conversation about her career goals and what she wants to do. And I make sure that as part of her day job, right? I'm not going to change her day job to be what it is that she wants to do in 5 years, but I can help ensure that what she does today helps her build the skills that she will need when she wants to go do something different. The other really important thing is to craft your career narrative. So really know how to own your story and tell it in a way that makes sense based on where you want to go. So if you want to change to a different profession, if you want to try something new, whether you're looking for a volunteer opportunity or to develop a hobby, or you want to build your own business, once you've identified those transferable skills, really practice telling the story of what you've done to date that is applicable to where you are going, and really practice with different people, with friends, with family. Find a way to tell a narrative that makes sense, right? If I was meeting you in an interview scenario where you were interviewing me, I would tell you about my career in a very different way. I would highlight the things that I did at every point along the way that would be relevant to the role that we were talking about, or to, this change that I was looking to make. Network like your next job depends on it. So one of the things that is also very helpful is to think about the things you want to try out, even if you're not ready to commit, even if you're thinking about 3 or 4 or 5 different things. For each one of those areas that you feel really passionately about, that you feel is really, you have an itch to try it out, go and network with that group of people, whether it's online events, whether it's, if in your region you can do in-person events, whether it's reaching out to people and asking for a virtual coffee to learn more about what it is that they do and what their job looks like. Again, here as well, you'd be surprised at how much people are willing to help. I get these messages in my inbox, at least once or twice a month, and I'm always happy to chat with people, to help them understand what it is that I do, help them think about their own career and what they want to do next. So it's really, really important to think about, who you want to learn from and be connected with, and who needs to know about what it is that you want to be doing next, what it is that the type of change you want to be making. And it doesn't have to be something massive. It doesn't have to be related to, switching your career from, a pastry chef to a NASA engineer. It can be as simple as understanding, how to move from being an engineer to a product manager, or, moving into design. There's a lot of, small changes that we can make in our careers along the way that make us so much more happier and fulfilled. So make sure you're networking with the people who can help you, that are going to be able to support you in the change and give you the information that you need in order to learn what it's all about. What if you just don't know what you want? And I added this one in because this has happened to me quite a bit. I have hit situations and times in my life where I just don't know what it is that I want. I know that I need a change. I know that it's time. I know that I'm feeling the itch. All I can come up with is a list of very bizarre things that I like, chocolate or grown plants, and none of it sound like a viable career option. What do you do then? So a few of the things that I found helpful for myself, one of the things is to really treat it as an investigation. Map out. What I typically do is I map out everything I've done so far, and in every step along the way, I look for what were the things that made me happy. When was I at my happiest? When was I in flow? When did things feel like they really clicked and I was really excited to go into work? And then think about those times and really understand, what was it that made that experience so good? And more often than not, it's not going to be about the role. It's not going to be about the actual content or the thing that you did. It will be about other things. And it will be about, for example, maybe it was the manager you had. Maybe it was the atmosphere in the workplace. Maybe it was the type of projects you were working on, the people you got to engage with. And doing that mapping exercise really helps you to uncover what are those core values and things that really make you excited to come into work. The other thing that helps me sometimes, and you'll have to bear with me here, is imagining how I want to feel at work. So regardless of what I do, if I wake up in the morning, how do I want to feel about my job? How do I want to feel when I'm in my job? I know it sounds a little woo-woo. Sounds like I'm about to tell you to, start practicing yoga and chanting and, get some crystals in your house. But this has a very strong cognitive basis, because when you imagine how you want to feel, it's easier to envision it, and it brings you clarity. And then B, you can also use that feeling to start to understand what it is that allows you to get there. So for example, if I know that I want to feel energized at work, I can then take that back and go, okay, what helps me, Noga, feel energized? And I have clear answers to that. I know I feel energized when I'm meeting new people. I know I feel energized when I'm giving a talk, preferably face to face. I know I feel energized when I'm writing about a topic that is really interesting to me. Now, those are not necessarily answers that, tell you what your next career stage is, but it helps you to start to uncover what are the bits and pieces that you need to have in your day job to make you fulfilled. And one of the things that I found is that even staying in the same job, I was able to negotiate adding into my day job things that I really cared about. So for example, a few years ago, at Microsoft in the startup space already, before this current role, I was miserable. I was just bored to tears with what I was doing. I wanted a change. I didn't see one coming, in sight. And thankfully, I had a very caring manager who said, hey, I see you're frustrated. I see you're not challenged. It's clear you need something different. There's an opportunity to move to this other leader and work for him. And I thought, okay, let's see. And I used that opportunity to also negotiate into my new role the things that I knew I really cared about. So I negotiated, for example, starting out a program for female founders. Remember Feminism? I never imagined that I would actually be able to integrate my feminism and how important it was to me to help other women be successful. But here I was with this new opportunity, and I could really negotiate what the scope of the role was. And I could, kind of make sure that I was giving this new manager what he wanted, while at the same time getting a little bit for myself. So that is around investigation and figuring out how you want to feel about things, what's important to you, what your values are. The other thing is really trying things on for size. We had a panel a few days ago in honor of International Women's Day, and a lot of folks were asking, well, how do I know? How do I know what I want to do? If I'm changing careers, if I'm moving into tech for the first time, how do I figure out if I want to do this or that or the other? And the truth of the matter is you never do. You never know. You never know what it is you want to be when you grow up for certain. I mean, at least most people don't. And the only way you can know is just trying things out. And this comes back to the price of change, right? So you need to decide for yourself how much risk you're willing to take on when you're trying new things out. Are you willing to, quit your day job in order to try something new and it might not work out? Or do you want to maybe do something that's a bit more conservative and try something new by volunteering, right? Volunteering for a project at work, volunteering for some type of a V team. Maybe it's starting up a side business and seeing if it works. Maybe it's taking a course that allows you to do some hands-on work to see if you actually enjoy doing it. So it really is about trying. I promise you, I don't think I ever knew what I wanted to do until I actually tried it out. The other thing, an exercise I really like doing is writing out your job description. So in a perfect world, what would your job look like? And not constraining yourself to reality or to not being reactive to job posts that you see on LinkedIn and or on different job sites, but just making it up. Being as creative as you want. I want to write a unicorn and see, 5 continents, whatever. because writing your own job description will really allow you to tease out what are those things that get you excited? What are the things that are really important to you? What are those intangibles, right? Not the content, not the job title, but those things that really get you excited. And you never know, the world is changing so fast these days. Maybe your role just has not been invented yet. Maybe you will be able to, invent it yourself, whether it's by starting your own business, or maybe you will negotiate inventing it when you go and interview and get accepted into a new job, and you will start to add those different pieces of kind of your dream job. So with that, I think we are towards the end of my piece and my sharing of best practices. I wanted to leave plenty of time for all of you to ask questions. So Moria, I'm going to hand it off to you so you can let me know if we have folks who want to ask anything, who want to provide any of their own feedback and ideas.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much. It was such a great talk and very inspiring, especially these days. I think the last year, it's really important to remind us all that it is possible. And I think your story is inspiring, and hopefully it was for others as well, and you enjoyed it. As I mentioned, you can post your questions at the comments tab, so please feel free to ask any questions. We got some really great feedback that you enjoyed the session. If you have any questions for Noga, if you want to ask anything about a personal situation that you have, or anything on the tips that she shared, please feel free to share it, and we will take the time to answer before we end the session. I also shared with you a link to the survey that we conduct for this event. So if you can dedicate a minute or two to fill in the survey, that will be great. I'm going to share the link with you also, so you have it here.
By the way, so you all know I could not see your comments while I was speaking, just because of the functionality. So I'm reading now all of your comments and really enjoying it. And I think Rebecca wins the race. She guessed home shopping. So yay, Rebecca.
Yeah, we did get some comments and guesses for the places and for the sales position.
Thankfully, I never had to sell anything. I just had to bring the product to the country. That was it.
Okay, if you don't have any questions, we're gonna end the session now. I think that Rebecca commented that as well. So thank you so much. We really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for Milana Reiter from the High Tech of Women in Israel community, also for helping organizing this event. We hope to see you again in other events. As I mentioned, we also have this event is part of a week of events that we dedicated to celebrate the International Women's Day, and we are having trivia tomorrow on 2 time slots. So check out the link that I share, and you can join us tomorrow. As well.
I see there's a couple of questions. Moria, can I answer them quickly before we?
Sure. Yes.
So I see one from Chen saying, "How did you grow over imposter syndrome?" Honestly, I did not. I deal with it all the time. I think there's a few methods that work for me, but it's also understanding that it's not necessarily when you make changes and you move into new careers, it does make the imposter syndrome maybe a bit stronger than otherwise. One of the things that really helps me is to map out all of my previous successes, what I've done, what I've managed to accomplish, even collect thank you notes or letters of appreciation or reviews, anything to help kind of remind myself that I'm quite accomplished, that I've done things, even if it's not the perfect match for this new career that I have now. The other thing I would say is just to be really aware of it, especially as women. I know we have men as well, but for women, we are far more susceptible to imposter syndrome. Part of it is also the messages we get from our surrounding. I can also recommend a really great book that I love that I also take her courses on a regular basis is Tara Moore. She wrote a book called Playing Big. And it's all about how women can overcome the different things that hold us back, whether external, internal, nature, nurture, whatever it might be, in order to do whatever it is that it is that we want to do in the world and to contribute. So that would be my tip. Chen, can I consult you in private? Sure thing. Everyone is free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I do my best to reply. It might take me a few days, but it's always super happy to help anyone. And yeah, I think that's it.
Perfect. So thank you so much. Thank you, Noga. Thank you, everyone who joined us. Hope to see you again in other events.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.